She was a volcano of ideas. We hope to excavate, to know more about her plans, about herself, her dynasty.
When scientists finally analyzed the DNA of a mummy believed to belong to Queen Hatshepsut, they expected routine answers, proof of ancestry, royal bloodlines, and historical confirmation. What they uncovered instead stunned researchers around the world. Hidden in her genetic code were clues that not only revealed the queen's true identity, but also raised unsettling questions about her health, her mysterious death, and even the legacy she left behind. For centuries, historians have described Hatshepsut as a visionary ruler who defied tradition by ruling Egypt as pharaoh. Yet, the DNA evidence told a far stranger story, one that connected her to forgotten secrets buried deep within the sands of Luxor and changed what we thought we knew about Egypt's golden age. Their discovery didn't just rewrite her biography. Instead, what they found in Queen Hatshepsut's DNA revealed a strange discovery about the Egyptian ruler. The rise of Egypt's female pharaoh. Long before Cleopatra's name became synonymous with beauty, intelligence, and power, another woman shattered the boundaries of tradition and forever changed the face of Egyptian history. Queen Hatshepsut. She was not born into obscurity or thrust into greatness by accident. Her destiny was carefully woven into the golden tapestry of Egypt's royal lineage. Born around 1507 BCE, Hatshepsut was the daughter of Pharaoh Thutmose I and his chief royal wife, Ahmose, both of noble and divine blood. Her father's reign was one of prosperity and expansion, and his influence would leave a lasting impression on the young princess. As a child of privilege, Hatshepsut was educated in administration, religion, and governance, a rare opportunity for women of her time. But even this privileged upbringing could not have predicted that she would one day crown herself Pharaoh of Egypt, the living embodiment of a god on earth. Following the death of her father, Hatshepsut married her half-brother, Thutmose II, as was customary among Egypt's royal families to preserve the purity of the divine bloodline. Their union, while politically necessary, produced only one daughter, Neferur. Thutmose II, however, had a son, Thutmose III, by a secondary wife named Isis. When Thutmose II died young, the Egyptian court was thrown into uncertainty. The boy Thutmose III, though heir to the throne, was far too young to rule the vast and complex kingdom. Tradition dictated that a regent would govern until he came of age, and that regent ended up being none other than his stepmother and aunt, Hatshepsut. At first, she appeared content to rule in the young king's name, fulfilling the traditional female role of caretaker and guardian of the throne. Yet, as the months turned into years, something extraordinary began to unfold. Hatshepsut's influence grew, her authority deepened, and the lines between regent and ruler blurred. Supported by powerful priests of Amun, Egypt's chief deity, and a loyal circle of advisors, she took a daring step unprecedented in Egypt's long and patriarchal history. She proclaimed herself Pharaoh of Egypt. To the ancient world, this was a radical act. Egypt's throne was seen as divinely male, a position held by gods and kings, not queens. But Hatshepsut was no ordinary woman. With remarkable political insight, she constructed a narrative that legitimized her rule not as rebellion, but as divine destiny. In temple inscriptions and reliefs, she presented herself as the daughter of Amun, conceived when the god himself took the form of her father to ensure her divine birth. She adopted all the symbols and regalia of kingship: the Nemes headdress, the uraeus cobra, the royal kilt, and even the false beard traditionally worn by male pharaohs. She had herself addressed as His Majesty in inscriptions, not to conceal her femininity, but to reinforce the divine authority that transcended gender. Her reign, lasting approximately 22 years, became one of the most peaceful and prosperous periods in Egypt's new kingdom. Unlike many rulers before and after her, Hatshepsut's legacy was not defined by military conquest, but by economic revival, architectural innovation, and cultural renaissance. She launched ambitious construction projects across the Nile Valley, each monument a testament to her vision and divinely ordained rule. The most magnificent of all was her mortuary temple at Deir el-Bahari, near modern Luxor, a masterpiece of ancient architecture. Rising in grand terraces against the cliffs, it symbolized harmony between the earth and the heavens. Its walls were covered in vivid reliefs depicting her divine birth, coronation, and achievements. Even today, Deir el-Bahari stands as one of the most breathtaking monuments of the ancient world, a silent witness to Queen Hatshepsut's enduring brilliance. Beyond architecture, Hatshepsut renewed Egypt's trade and diplomacy. She reopened ancient trade routes long neglected after years of instability, most notably launching a grand expedition to the mysterious land of Punt, thought to be near modern-day Somalia or Eritrea. The reliefs at Deir el-Bahari clearly portray this journey. Towering ships filled with gold, ivory, rare woods, leopards, incense, and living myrrh trees, which were later planted in temple courtyards. This triumphant voyage not only strengthened Egypt's economy, but also reinforced her image as a ruler, blessed by the gods. Under her guiding hand, Egypt prospered. The temples of Karnak grew, agriculture flourished, and the arts entered a golden age. Her reign reflected peace, abundance, and devotion to the gods, proving that leadership was not shaped by gender, but by wisdom and vision. Yet, after her death, history shifted sharply. When Thutmose III eventually took sole control, he launched a deliberate effort to erase Hatshepsut from memory. Her statues were shattered, her images damaged, and her name carved away from royal monuments and king lists. For centuries, her story was almost lost, buried beneath the sands of time. Scholars still question his motives, whether it was bitterness, political strategy, or simply an attempt to restore the traditional image of kingship. Whatever his reasons, his actions ultimately failed, as interest in this remarkable figure has returned. But the question remains, how did so many gaps in our understanding exist about such an influential ruler for so long? The search for her mummy. For centuries, Queen Hatshepsut stood as one of ancient Egypt's greatest mysteries. Her reign was thoroughly recorded. The temples, obelisks, and inscriptions uncovered spoke of wealth, creativity, and sacred kingship. Yet her physical remains were absent. Unlike other New Kingdom rulers whose mummies were uncovered with ceremony, Hatshepsut's body was never found. It was as if the earth itself had chosen to hide her. Without her mummy, Egyptologists could not determine how she lived, how she died, or what her rediscovery might reveal about the woman who dared to rule as pharaoh. The mystery began to form in 1903, when British archaeologist Howard Carter, still years before discovering Tutankhamun's tomb, came upon a modest burial in the Valley of the Kings, a small chamber now known as Tomb Cave 60. Unlike the grand royal tombs carved deep into stone, Cave 60 was plain, roughly cut, and chaotic. Inside, Carter found two female mummies. One lay in a wooden coffin marked with the name Sitra-In, identified in records as Hatshepsut's royal nurse, the woman who raised her from childhood. The second mummy, however, was far more puzzling. It lay carelessly on the floor, unwrapped, unnamed, and unidentified. At the time, Carter could not have grasped the importance of his find. With no markings or objects tying the second mummy to royalty, he recorded it, sealed the tomb, and moved on. For decades, the two women of KV-60 slipped into obscurity, briefly mentioned in archaeological notes. The unmarked mummy was labeled an unknown servant or minor noblewoman, her true identity buried by time. Meanwhile, another tomb, KV-20, believed to be Hatshepsut's true burial place, provided no clarity. When explorers entered, they discovered two impressive stone sarcophagi, one bearing Hatshepsut's name, the other belonging to her father, Thutmose I. Both stood empty. It appeared that the queen who built one of Egypt's most iconic monuments, the terraced temple of Deir el-Bahari, had vanished from her own tomb. Her disappearance confused Egyptologists for generations. Some believed her stepson, Thutmose III, had destroyed her mummy to erase her legacy. Others suggested priests hid her body to protect it from harm. A few speculated tomb robbers had looted her burial long before modern discovery. Whatever the truth, Hatshepsut's remains, like her memory, had slipped into history. Then, more than a century after Carter's quiet find, the mystery returned. In 2007, Dr. Zahi Hawass, Egypt's chief of antiquities at the time, reopened the search for Hatshepsut's missing mummy. Using modern forensic techniques never before applied to Egyptian mummies, including CT scans, DNA analysis, and digital facial reconstruction, Hawass and his team re-entered the forgotten KV-60 tomb. There, they re-examined the two mummies Carter had uncovered over 100 years earlier. Inscriptions confirmed one as Sitter-in, yet the identity of the second woman, the one found on the floor, remained uncertain. Then came a pivotal clue. In the Egyptian Museum in Cairo, curators located a small wooden box labeled with Hatshepsut's cartouche, her royal name. Inside it was a single tooth, carefully preserved for millennia. What followed was one of the most extraordinary moments in modern Egyptology. The team compared the tooth with CT scans of the unmarked mummy's jaw from KV-60. Astonishingly, the tooth fit perfectly into the gap in her upper jaw, a forensic match so exact that even modern scientists could not dispute it. The mummy once cast aside as insignificant was, in fact, Queen Hatshepsut herself. This was shocking. After more than 3,400 years, the missing mummy of Egypt's greatest female ruler had finally been found. Not in the grandeur of a royal tomb like other pharaohs, but in a forgotten chamber, placed beside her childhood nurse. It was a poignant image. The nurse who had once cradled the young princess, now resting eternally beside the woman who became pharaoh. In that moment, the sands of history shifted. Modern science had succeeded where ancient politics had failed, resurrecting the memory of a queen who refused to be erased. The DNA revelation. Even after the rediscovery of the mysterious mummy in tomb KV-60, one question continued to haunt Egyptologists. Was this truly the body of Queen Hatshepsut, the legendary woman who dared to rule as pharaoh? The discovery of the tooth that fit perfectly into the mummy's jaw had provided a tantalizing clue. But for the world of science, visual or circumstantial evidence was not enough. What was needed was hard biological proof, a genetic signature that could stand the test of scrutiny. And so began one of the most ambitious and delicate scientific investigations ever undertaken in Egyptology. At the heart of this effort were Dr. Angelique Corthals, a forensic anthropologist from the University of Manchester, and Dr. Yahia Gad, a molecular geneticist at Egypt's National Research Center in Cairo. Both scientists were part of a new generation of researchers who believed that ancient DNA could unlock secrets that archaeology alone could not. Their mission was to extract and analyze the DNA of the unidentified mummy from KV-60 and determine once and for all whether she was indeed Hatshepsut. It was a daunting challenge. The mummification process in ancient Egypt, while designed to preserve the body for eternity, was ironically the very reason why DNA was so hard to retrieve. Embalmers had used resins, natron salts, and oils so potent that they not only hardened the tissues, but also destroyed most of the genetic material within. Add to that over 3,400 years of desert heat, humidity, and microbial decay, and it was a near impossible mission. Extracting DNA from a mummy, Dr. Corthels explained, is like trying to read a manuscript that has been burned, soaked in tar, and shredded into pieces. Every step of the process had to be performed under sterile, controlled conditions. A single modern fingerprint or a speck of dust could contaminate the results. The samples, tiny fragments of bone and tissue, were treated with extreme care and analyzed in separate laboratories to eliminate any possibility of error. The team also made use of polymerase chain reaction, PCR, a method that allows scientists to amplify even the smallest surviving pieces of DNA into sequences large enough to study. The researchers knew that nuclear DNA, which contains a person's complete genetic code, would almost certainly be too degraded. Instead, they focused on mitochondrial DNA, the type of genetic material passed down through the maternal line, which is more resistant to decay. If the KV-60 mummy was truly Hatshepsut, her mitochondrial DNA would have to show clear similarities with that of her known maternal relatives within the royal bloodline. The researchers compared the genetic material with samples collected from other mummies known to belong to her lineage, especially Ahmose Nefertari, the honored royal matron of the 18th dynasty, and Thutmose III, Hatshepsut's father. The process was meticulous. Every fragment of ancient DNA needed to be sequenced, cross-checked, and validated by several independent laboratories. Days stretched into weeks, and weeks into months, as the team worked through damaged genetic data searching for a result that could rewrite history. Then, finally, arrived the moment that changed everything. The mitochondrial DNA sequencing was finished, and a match emerged. The enigmatic KV-60 mummy shared identical maternal genetic markers with Hatshepsut's royal bloodline. The finding was astonishing, a scientific confirmation that this truly was Egypt's lost queen. "It felt as though she spoke to us across the ages," said Dr. Gad. Her DNA had carried her voice forward when everything else had fallen silent. The genetic breakthrough was only part of the proof. Advanced CT scans offered an even clearer understanding. They showed a woman in her late 40s to early 50s, aligning with estimates of Hatshepsut's age at death. Her skeleton reflected the dignified posture of someone long accustomed to sitting upright on a throne, and her internal organs had been carefully removed and preserved, as expected, for royalty. But the most powerful confirmation came from a discovery so modest, yet so undeniable, that it became the defining moment of the investigation. Inside a wooden box bearing Hatshepsut's cartouche, discovered years earlier in a separate cache, rested a single tooth. When scientists compared the CT scan of the KV-60 mummy's mouth with the tooth, they found a flawless anatomical match. The broken root fit perfectly into the gap in her jawbone, aligning even with the curve and enamel wear. As Dr. Hawass later explained, the tooth fit the empty socket in the mummy's jaw exactly, a match modern forensics could never challenge. The consequences were extraordinary. For the first time ever, DNA testing had verified the identity of an ancient Egyptian ruler. It was more than an archaeological victory. It was a triumph of science, a moment when technology reached through time to give voice to the silent. Through the accuracy of modern genetics, Queen Hatshepsut, the woman who once ruled as His Majesty, who was later erased by successors and lay forgotten for over 3,000 years, was finally returned to her rightful place among the eternal pharaohs of the Nile. Her DNA accomplished what carved inscriptions and broken statues never could. It made her name eternal again. But that was not all. The strange discovery. For centuries, the close of Queen Hatshepsut's rule remained wrapped in rumor and uncertainty. When modern science eventually uncovered and examined her DNA, the truth revealed was far more unsettling than any myth. It was not treachery or assassination that ended Egypt's powerful female pharaoh, as many once believed, but instead a merciless twist of destiny, a quiet destroyer born from her own choices. When scientists conducted CT scans on the KV-60 mummy, identified through DNA as Hatshepsut, the findings were both eye-opening and alarming. Beneath fragile layers of linen and hardened resin, they uncovered a peculiar revelation. The once mighty queen's remains revealed a tale of profound agony. Her skeleton displayed unmistakable evidence of metastatic bone cancer, with damage spreading across her pelvis, spine, and thigh bones, an illness that would have inflicted unbearable pain during her final months. Her organs and preserved tissues, though dried by time, showed additional signs of obesity and metabolic imbalance, indicating she may have suffered from type 2 diabetes. Scholars were initially confused. How could an Egyptian ruler, whose meals were typically abundant in fruits, grains, and fish, and whose role involved physically demanding ceremonial obligations, develop such disorders? The explanation would surface not from her burial chamber, but from the belongings laid to rest beside her. Among the simple artifacts stored within a wooden box carved with Hatshepsut's royal name was a small alabaster bottle, once holding a dense, aromatic balm or healing ointment. For decades, this item was dismissed as a harmless cosmetic treasure until chemical testing exposed its disturbing truth. The balm contained benzoperine, a tar-based hydrocarbon now known as one of the most dangerous carcinogens recognized by science. In ancient times, benzoperine was unknowingly included in blends made from resin, pitch, and tar, common components in ointments used to soothe skin ailments or as beauty preparations to soften and scent the body. It seems that Hatshepsut, renowned for her devotion to personal care and ceremonial cleanliness, may have applied the lotion often, convinced of its benefits. In heartbreaking irony, this very practice may have been slowly killing her. The same balm intended to protect her vitality and appearance may have sparked the cancer that claimed her life. Dr. Yahia Gad, a leading geneticist involved in studying her remains, noted that Hatshepsut's DNA revealed a susceptibility to metabolic and cancer-related conditions, including obesity and diabetes, which could have increased her vulnerability to benzopyrene's harmful effects. It was a perfect convergence, he explained. Her body's inherent frailties, paired with repeated exposure to toxic substances, may have determined her end. Her declining health may also clarify the long-argued transfer of authority that followed her passing. Near the conclusion of her reign, her worsening condition could have made her increasingly reliant on officials and religious leaders, reducing her hands-on command of power. When she eventually died, likely weakened by illness rather than overthrown, her stepson and former co-ruler Thutmose III may have taken the chance to redefine Egypt's royal story. His later efforts to remove her name, dismantle her statues, and claim her monuments may not have been fueled by anger, as once assumed, but instead a strategic move to restore the conventional vision of male rulership that Hatshepsut's reign had so daringly challenged. Through scientific inquiry, the ancient enigma of Hatshepsut's vanishing was finally clarified. She was neither assassinated nor cursed, but undone by the silent brutality of chemistry. A sorrowful reminder that even those who chase eternity must ultimately yield to the weakness of the human body.